lovely people. How you doing? So my name is Jenna Platt and I am on social media, That Nurse Who Asks Questions. And today I am with Becky. Becky, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell people who you are and where they can find you on social media.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Jenna. So yeah, I'm Rebekah Whitaker. You can find me, my main platform that I use is LinkedIn. So I'm Rebekah Whitaker on there. And thank you, Mum and Dad. Rebekah is spelt a bit funny. So it's an Rebekah.
Name's never on a cup, never on a pen.
Never on anything.
Oh.
No, I could never go to a gift shop and get anything with Rebekah on. So yeah, Rebekah Whitaker. It's Rebekah Whitaker ACC on LinkedIn. I also have my website, www.questforest.co.uk. And I have a podcast which you can find on all your major podcast players, which is In Pursuit of the Better You.
Fantastic.
And that's where you can find me.
So this is our first time meeting.
No.
But we've known each other for a little while. So me and Becky met doing our foundation year in transactional analysis. Yeah, I forgot what the whole podcast was about then.
What did we study?
What did we talk about for a year? Yeah, so organisational transactional analysis. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And without putting Becky on too much pressure, hopefully we'll have a little series next year where we can break down the sections of it, which I found really helpful. So for those that don't know, what is transactional analysis?
Oh, okay.
Dun, dun,
Dun, dun, dun. Let's see what I know.
I've got my notes here. I'm
So transactional analysis, it is a psychological theory around human development and connection and communication that was established by Eric Berne back in the, I want to say 70s, 60s, 70s. So it's been around a little while now. But for me, transactional analysis has just kind of become like life. So it's gone beyond a psychological theory into actually how I now try and live my life and how my life suddenly makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you remember how you found transactional analysis?
So I first came across transactional analysis actually like years ago. I did a leadership and management diploma, and like a lot of leadership stuff, they like to bring in a bit of TA. And it focused on the ego states, which if you've never heard of transactional analysis, be like, what the heck is the ego states? But we can come on to that a little bit later, or maybe we'll just bring that in next year when we do our TA series. We'll see.
There's a hook.
There it is. I'm in. And they like to throw it in because it's a great way to look at how people communicate. But that must have been, I think I was in my early 20s. And I don't think I was ready for it. Like it was like something on a piece of paper that was really nice and it sounded good, but I didn't really think anything more of it until just over 2 years ago, I started to retrain as a coach. So my background is as an engineer. I spent 15 years working as an engineer, and then I retrained as a coach. And one of my coaching modules was on transactional analysis, taught by a woman called Lucy Power, who is incredible. And her sort of love and passion for TA is nothing short of infectious. And that is exactly what happened. She taught TA as that module, and I was like, oh my goodness, this has to come back into my life now. Like, this has to be part of what I do and what I learn and how I grow. And so when I finished my coach training, I then set off looking for, where else can I start to learn more about TA? And I've never really looked back since.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know where I found it. I was trying to think about it on the drive up here, and I don't know. So I had counselling when I was about, I want to say like early 20s. I had counselling, and I don't know whether that was the framework that they used. And then I had it again. Probably I was about 27, 28. And again, I don't even know whether that was the one that the counsellor used at the time. I almost messaged her yesterday actually to ask her if that is her framework. So somehow between having counselling, I found TA. And I don't know whether that was the framework they used or because of my deeper interest in kind of counselling and counselling frameworks, I did reading around it. And We're on a car park at the moment as well. In this lovely little village. It's there's like scarecrows everywhere. There's a rugby team, which I'm not going to lie, that made me look twice. So if you hear anything, we're in a car park at the moment. It's all part of the experience.
Absolutely.
I've lost. I need to get like all these slogans on t-shirts. I've lost. Where was I talking? What was I saying?
You were talking about counselling.
Yes, counselling.
And somewhere between counselling.
Yes. So I don't know whether it was further reading that I did or whether it was the framework that was used. Regardless, it was helpful. It made sense to me as well. And that was one of Burns, like what he wanted to achieve. He wanted to make it accessible to people because at the time when he was practicing and starting with transactional analysis, things were so complex and you had to do all of these academic courses and things, and there wasn't that relationship with the person receiving therapy, the patient, for want of a better word, and the therapist. There was quite a big bridge between the two. So he wanted to make something simple, and maybe that's why I like it. And then going on from that, I did like a level 1 intro into counselling skills, and then at the Burn where we met, I did the 101 TA, and we'll call it TA as well, just for ease. That's transactional analysis. So I did the 101 TA, and then from that was when I wanted to do the organisational transactional analysis, and it's used in different areas. So I wanted to go into care homes, use the knowledge that I had, the experience that I had, and make a difference. That was the reason why I started. I think that the 5-year plan has kind of changed a little bit now, but I still love the subject. So that's my journey with TA. And one of the things that it has done is it has really helped my relationship with my husband, especially.
Yes.
So for those that don't know, I feel like we should explain a bit more what TA is. So I explain it as like a traffic light. So you've got your set of traffic lights with your 3 lights, and that's kind of the diagram that is the basic diagram, that the 3 circles on top of each other. So these aren't kind of lit up. These are just 3 circles, but in that kind of setup where one's on top of each other. And within us, we've all got the adult, parent, child. And when you read up on TA and you become self-aware, you can then see it everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere.
And this doesn't mean that you, like, any one of them's bad. So we're not saying that when you enter your child ego state that that's a bad thing. It's just about recognising it. So, for example, if you are in the supermarket and you're wanting a refund and the lady in front of you is talking a little bit too long and you start to have a tantrum and stamp your feet and, I'm not getting my own way, recognise that that's coming from the child ego. And if that isn't serving you, if that's not helping you in life, if that's not helping other people around you, then that's the bit that you need to work on. How you can help that child. And what needs does that child in us have? So we've got the 3 stacks of circles, and then the parent, adult, child, and you don't need to be a parent to have the parent within you.
No, so your parent ego state is made up of any influential big people from when you were a small person. Now, they can also be influential big people that you meet as you're growing up through your life, but it will mainly be filled with a lot of influential big people. And so within your parent ego state, so like my parent ego state would have my parents. I grew up with my parents, might have some of my teachers in there. It's probably, I grew up in a really religious family. It's probably got some religious leaders in there. Could have the local corner shop owner in there. It could be any influential big person. So within that parent ego state, that is all the things that you picked up from these influential big people. You're either in or you're out. That was one of the favourite things that I now find myself saying, but that isn't my thoughts. I don't actually really care if my kids are in or out all the time. But that's something that came from my parent ego state. Whereas in your child ego state, that's the sense that your child, or you as a child, made of what the big people around you are doing. So parent, very much real people, real things going on there. The child is about how you interpreted that when you were younger. So what you made it mean when you heard you're either in or you're out, for example. And then in the middle of all that, you've got your adult. And your adult is when you are very much in the present. You are accounting. You are taking notice of the here and the now, and not the there and then, which is where you are when you're in parent and child mode. But I'm wondering if it's worth even going back a step from our 3 circles to looking at the 3 core principles of TA. So these are the things that I've taken beyond being core principles, beyond being just something on a piece of paper, to I now call these my 3 rules for life. So the first of those is I'm okay, you're okay. And I think this is such a beautiful statement. When we're working with I'm okay, you're okay, it means that we're showing each other that real mutual level of respect, that I'm no better than you, you're no better than me. And that underneath everything, underneath whatever's happened to us in our lives, even if we're really in a really difficult place, underneath it all, at our very, very core, no matter what, we're still okay. And it's important to differentiate, I think, between behaviour and at your core, because if we're going to accept I'm okay, you're okay, we accept that about everyone. And we know that there are plenty of people in the world whose behaviour is far from okay. But what we're saying is, underneath it all, they were born okay, and they always have the potential to return to being okay.
Yeah.
And the second then rule is that we can all think for ourselves. So we all have the capacity to think for ourselves. We don't need someone else to do that for us. And that, I feel, is really empowering. And when I share that with coaching clients, that's exactly the sort of language that they use around it, that is empowering, that they can, even in situations that are out of your control, you can always think for yourself, and you can always think about how you feel about this situation, and you can always choose how you're going to respond.
Yeah.
And then the third and final of these 3 core principles of my 3rd rule for life is that change is possible. So what Burns said is, we all decide our fate and we can change our mind at any time. And I love that. That really links back nicely for me with this idea of I'm okay, you're okay, and taking away the not okay behaviours, because change is possible. And with what we know from modern neuroscience, the change is quite literally physically possible as well, because we can rewire our brains so we can change the way that we think and we feel and we act. It takes effort, of course it does, but it is possible. And so those 3 core principles for me, it just makes TA like such a hopeful theory. Like, yeah, whenever I think of it as being happy and hopeful, and I'm going to say like anything's possible, but not in like that really cheesy, like I'm going to be a millionaire overnight, but but that I can change. I can get out of being in one of these ego states, for example, that actually really doesn't work for me very much anymore, because I can change that at any time.
Yeah, when you were talking about that I'm okay, it made me feel really quite emotional thinking about a scenario that I brought to the class when we were on training. And so what had happened, and this might kind of wrap those 2 things up that we've both discussed with an example. So I don't like trifle. Don't like cold custard on anything. I think it's just horrible. Like, what are those, like creme brulees and things like that?
Yeah.
Like,
they're not the ones.
Yeah, I don't like that. And I'm not a massive fan of jelly. There's something about the texture. I don't like bananas or mashed potato either. So, although I am getting better with mash, like little portions. So we were going to a friend's house, and Lisa always does a trifle, and she puts so much effort, and it looks great. And up until that part, my husband had always come with me. So he had 2 portions. But he wasn't coming with me this night. It was just me. So now I need to come clean. But I don't want to make Lisa under pressure. I don't want her to think that she has to do something different for me. So I took one of those little goo pots, a little lemon cheesecake, and we went for the meal. And I was like, oh, Lisa, I'm not a fan of trifle. It's not your trifle, it's just trifle. And I bought my own. And she's like, yeah, fine. Just put them in the fridge, check. And there was something about that transaction with so that's why it's called transactional analysis. So there was a transaction there between me and Lisa. There was something about that just made me feel so accepted for who I am and where I'm at. So Lisa didn't go into her critical parent and like, do you know how much effort I spent all day all doing this trifle, and I've cut the fruit by none of that. And she wasn't like, oh, go on, just have a piece. It was just, just put yours in the fridge, it's fine. And when I brought that back to the lesson, that's when our lecturer then said about, I'm okay, you're okay. So I was okay with my decision. I was okay. It's okay not to like trifle. It's okay to bring something that doesn't put Lisa out. And it's okay from Lisa's perspective to make trifle and me not to like it.
Yeah.
So she wasn't bringing something like her mum might have said, like, well, you'll sit there until you finished it, until your plate's clean. And this is what we're talking about. So this is the bringing those, how you can see that I'm okay, you're okay, and the adult parent child examples. So tying those together. And I think that in relationships, certainly up until my marriage, there was a lot of I'm not okay, you're okay. And what that means is that an ex-partner of mine would be okay, everything's fine, but I'm in an exhausted pile on the floor because I'm trying to make them okay whilst not being okay myself. So yeah, and do you know what? That's a very important part of TA for me, but I always forget it. And then every time someone reminds me of it, I'm like, oh my God, yes. Yeah. And there's something about that as well, because out of all my TA books, that's the one the dog chewed.
No.
Yeah. So I was like, well, Diogi is okay with me not being okay. I don't know what it is about that.
Brilliant.
But I find that so valuable. And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, and that's probably where the emotion came from as well. Because it's like, yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that.
And I think for me as well, anything else, when it comes to TA, and this is one of the things that I love about it, that I remember, our lecturer sort of saying, if there's a part of it that just doesn't land with you, then just put that to one side. But if you can't get on board with those 3 core principles, then TA is probably not the theory for you. But if you can sort of get your head around, I'm okay, you're okay, we can all think and change is possible, then like strap in because and enjoy the ride, because TA is really transformative. Once you actually really start to look at yourself through that TA lens, it can be life-changing. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really why I wanted to talk to you today, to kind of bang the TA drum a little bit. And then I'm putting the pressure on you here. But then next year, if we do that series where we've got these little segments, so we can go deeper into the I'm okay, you're not okay, and then we'll have the presentation going, we'll have all sorts going, to make it easier for people to kind of go through, because it really has helped me. And when I look at my relationship with my husband and also my interactions with people in general as well, if I can see that they are coming from the child ego, I then don't get drawn into it. And that's the choice that we have. Do we get drawn into these transactions, or do we remain as the adult in the present, not kind of taking it on like personally? Do we remain in the adult, or do we kind of get involved with these games? And that's another thing about the games that people play. Games, yep.
Have you read that book?
I haven't. I started reading the book.
It's a difficult read.
It is a difficult read. It's funny because when you were saying at the start about Byrne wanted to make it really accessible, but I think he actually forgot.
Yeah, I just contradicted myself.
No, but I think he forgot like how clever he was. Like I think he thought he was like speaking to the layman. But actually, I think I started to read games that people play like too early. Like I think I didn't have like the foundations right.
Yeah.
Because now when I look back through, like I've gone through sections of games people play to look further into the games, and now it makes a lot more sense because now I'm building on those foundations rather than just trying to like dive straight in and understand like game theory, for example. But yeah, it's interesting, and plus, you know, it was written a while ago, right? You know, Byrne's not with us anymore, and as much as there are some, you know, obviously great transactional analysts who are writing, transactional analysts, who are writing, you know, great works, you know, taking it back to the original stuff. You know, you're going back a few decades, so it is sometimes like you're in another era, which you really are.
Yeah. I wonder what the games would be now like if there was a revised edition.
Yeah, they have different names.
Yeah. So some of them, I think it's like 116 pages. It's not a very big book. And I think that's where the deceit comes in. Because you're like, oh yeah, I could just read this. Honestly, it took me weeks to read it. Because it's like you have to read a game, and then you think of examples of when that might have happened. And then you realise, oh, well, actually, maybe I've got it mixed up with something else. So, yeah, I totally agree. If that's your first entry to TA, then doing some of the groundwork and then revisiting it and having a look at it. And there's a few games in there. And again, when you recognise the games that people play, you can then make the decision of, do you play it?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing around transactional analysis for me and around coaching in general, you know, why I love coaching, because for me, it's all about raising your self-awareness, and that journey to being more self-aware can be really brutal, because you know, you are literally holding that mirror up and looking at like the good, the bad, the ugly, and the real good, bad and ugly, not just the stuff that you think or that other people have told you. You know, you're taking that real and true view of yourself. But the beautiful thing about self-awareness is it then gives you the power to choose. Because you are no longer sort of acting out of ignorance. You're no longer acting out of auto-control, out of autopilot even. You know, you can now grab the steering wheel and take control, and therefore you can choose to do things differently.
Yeah.
And, you know, game theory is one of those great parts of TA that, again, once you get your head around it, it's like, oh my goodness, games everywhere. And Stephen Cartman developed the drama triangle as a way of sort of trying to help explain game theory, because game theory is like a formula, which, you know, like if you, I mean, I know I was an engineer, but I actually have a real aversion to maths. So as soon as I see a formula, I'm like, ugh. Whereas the drama triangle then sort of helps explain these different positions that you might find yourself in. And again, makes it a bit more accessible and a bit more fun, you know, because I do a lot of stuff around drama triangle work.
Should we explain what the drama triangle is?
Yeah, let's explain what the drama triangle is. So first,
what is your example first? I don't want to kind of mess up what you were going to, your example.
I've already forgotten what I was going to do for my example, so it's all right. No, that's totally cool. We'll explain what the drama triangle is. So the drama triangle. So for this, if you imagine an inverted triangle, so you've got the 2 points at the top and one at the bottom. And there are 3 different positions on the drama triangle. So you have your persecutor. And so Jenna talked earlier about if someone is in an I'm okay, you're not okay. We call that like a one-up position. So when we're in I'm okay, you're okay, we're level, we're equal, we're there together. But a persecutor is in an I'm okay, you're not okay. They see themselves in a one-up. And a persecutor is, they're always right. They're very derogatory, though, about people who are then wrong. So it's very much my way or the highway. If you'd have only done it like this, if you'd have only listened to me in the first place, I don't understand why on earth you can't see this, and because I can't understand your point of view, I'm going to call you all names under the sun. And this takes up your top left position on the drama triangle. Your top right position is taken up by the rescuer. And the rescuer also sees themselves in a one-up position. They see, I'm okay, you're not okay. But they come at it from an almost holier-than-thou perspective. Don't worry, everyone, I'm here. I'll sort this out now. Look, I know you find that really difficult. So next time it comes up, you send that to me. I'll sort it out. I'm here. I can do it. So both persecutors and rescuers don't allow you to sort of think for yourselves. They're forgetting, one, that I'm okay, you're okay, and they're forgetting that we can all think for ourselves, right? And then in that bottom position on the triangle, we have the victim. Victims take no responsibility for the position that they're in. They take no ownership of what is going on in their lives. And they see it as, woe is me. You will never understand this because you don't have to deal with all the things that I have to deal with. And so the drama triangle, these positions then on the drama triangle, what happens is we all have sort of our go-to position.
What's yours?
I'm a go-to persecutor.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
Oh, I'm a rescuer.
Persecutor. And
I'm a chronic recovering rescuer.
Yeah, chronic recovering persecutor as well. I like to think that generally I've gone past persecuting and shouting and wagging my finger, but not always, because I'm not perfect. I'm a work in progress. And what happens is we jump onto the drama triangle during a game, and we then dance around it a bit, and we might exchange positions. And at some point, there's like this switch that happens. And when we're talking about drama, when we're talking about games, it's when we then have this moment when we go, how the hell did I get here? How on earth did this happen?
Yeah.
I was only trying to do this, that, or the other. I was only trying to help them. I was only trying to tell them the better way for them to do something. And what happens is we'll kind of dance around the triangle a little bit, and then we get spat out in a whole new position. So I get then spat out in victim, because then I'm thinking, oh, I can't believe that they've got cross with me. Like, I was only trying to tell them the way that I would do it, and obviously the way that I would do it is right. And this is the drama triangle. You know, this is what happens when we have those interactions where we both come away feeling a bit crap. But the drama triangle, again, it's just, for me, it's a beautiful thing. It really illustrates that so nicely and so neatly.
Yeah. And it's not always, sometimes it's a bit more subtle as well than like the examples given. So I remember the first time that I was kind of aware of it. And do you know what? This is where I first found TA.
Oh.
Yeah, it was in counselling. I don't know whether that was a framework that she used, but she made me aware of the drama triangle, and then I read about the drama triangle. That's
there we
it.
go.
There we go. Exclusive.
Got it.
Bing. Yeah, so what had happened was I was on a training course. I was a trainer, and I was both the persecutor and the rescuer, and some of the learners were victims. And my gosh, I was completely exhausted by the end of the session, because so what had happened was some of the standards had changed, and they needed to, I say some of the standards had changed. It was basically the same thing, but packaged differently. Like that was it. So how they assess people in the workplace and things like that. It was just a different set of documents. But it's what we've said we've always done. So there wasn't really that much change. It was just the documentation. I was doing a course to show them the documentation, and I was then the persecutor because they didn't want to be there, but I was telling them they need to do more work. You need to do more, was their interpretation. You need to do more work. But that wasn't, it wasn't actually more work. It was the same, just packaged differently. So then as they were giving me problems, I was then trying to fix them and rescue it and trying to, oh, well, if you do this or if you do that, or we'll print this or we'll send you this, or I'll do this link, I'll do this. And the more, so then we were in like the yes, but game, like, yes, but. Oh, well, what about this? Yes, but. Oh, well, what about this? Yes, but. And then I remember walking into reception, and there was this lady, and I can't remember her name. And let's say her name was Jenny. And I was like, Jenny, I know this isn't your job, but I feel like I'm being fed to the lions. Can you please print this off for me? Please. Quickly, please. And that wasn't good enough either. And that carried on for 2 days.
Oh.
But if I was aware of the drama triangle and games, I wouldn't have made it last for 2 days. I can guarantee that. And that was my entry into TA.
Brilliant.
I was exhausted and I was so confused. Like, why aren't all my efforts helpful? And yeah, I drove home super confused. And then I must have had a counselling session afterwards, or maybe not immediately afterwards, but I spoke about it. And that was it. That was where I found out. So the drama triangle, yes, I remember now.
There we go. And then, of course, the opposite of the drama triangle, we have the winner's triangle.
Yeah.
So then what I love about this is, it's not like we don't just highlight this and then like leave you to it. AC Choi then came up with the winner's triangle as the way to sort of like positions that we can take on instead, that just by making sort of real subtle shifts in the way that we do things means that we don't end up on that drama triangle. At the end of it, we don't come away feeling crap. And so should we just explain that one real quick?
Yeah.
So again, it's the same triangle, the same inverted triangle, but instead of having a persecutor, in this triangle, you've got assertive. So when you're on the winner's triangle, I should say first, you're always remembering the 3 core principles of TA. And as long as you remember those 3 core principles, you cannot end up in a game. You cannot end up on the drama triangle.
And we're all at risk as well. Like, I will still enter games as well, even though I've got an awareness.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my goodness, yes.
It won't stop it.
But you are more aware of it. But it will stop it a lot. It will stop it a lot.
Yeah, it will definitely reduce it.
And but also, you can play over on the winner's triangle, which I'll explain slightly more in a minute. Doesn't mean that someone else isn't still going to try and pull you back onto the drama triangle. But you can keep RSVPing. No, I'm all right. How about you come and join me on my nice winner's triangle? Because when we dance around this one, we don't come away feeling crap because we're remembering our 3 core principles. So when we're assertive, we are able to ask for those things that we need, but without belittling or berating others. It could be along the lines of, I don't like it when you speak to me like that. What can we change so that this can be a really productive conversation? Rather than persecute, how dare you talk to me like that? Who do you think? Real subtle shift. I'm asking for what I want. I want my needs to be met, but I'm not doing it in a way that belittles you. In our other top position, we have caring instead of a rescuer. And caring, when you are caring, you are making it known that you are available to help someone else. But what you are not doing is taking away that person's ability to think and do for themselves like the rescuer does. It's almost like coming in and saying, look, I have resources. They're available to you. You let me know what you need and I'm here to support you.
And I think with that one as well, because you give less of yourself, there is less of an expectation. So like you say, with the drama triangle, we kind of feel a bit crap afterwards because I'm giving. Well, all the printouts didn't work, did they? All the links I sent didn't work. All that extra stuff didn't work. But then if you say, well, do you know what? At the end of class, if you're still not sure, or if we should sit down about it now and talk about it, but you're not giving all of, like, you've got to give me a little bit as well. Like, so you don't take it as personally as from the rescuer's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not flying in anymore with your cloak on, your superhero cape, and I know what it is that you need to fix this. Instead, you're saying, it's almost like I'll hand you your own cape and I will support you as you fix this yourself, but you need to let me know what you need.
Yeah.
And so then instead of our victim in our bottom position on the winner's triangle, we have vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, we know that we need help. We know that we're in a sticky situation, but we're not forgetting that underneath it all, we're okay, that we can still think for ourselves and that things can change for us. So when we're in the vulnerable position, we can ask for the help that we need, but we also know that it's okay for the other people to say no. And there's no longer very often you might find on the drama triangle, if someone's in victim and they ask for help and someone says no, the victim very quickly switches to persecutor for how on earth can you not help me with this, blah, blah, blah. You can imagine the rest. So when you're vulnerable, you're saying, yeah, actually, hand up here. I need something. I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to ask for it. And I'm hoping that you can help me. But even if you can't, I'll still be okay. And again, I think it's just such a beautiful way of being able to still say, right now, I don't feel okay. Because this is one of my big gripes, Gemma. Jenna. I just called you Gemma. I've never called
I answer.
Because you know what? Not your name.
Do you know what? Driving here, I was like, don't call her Sarah. Don't call her Sarah. And why am I going to call her?
Called Sarah.
Oh.
I mean, not that you know her, but that's so weird. So sorry, Jenna. This is one of my big gripes on social media.
We'll put a, you know, like when you watch a Spanish film with subtitles,
oh,
like
yeah.
we'll put a really, and it will say Jenna.
Yes, let's do that. Thank you. Let's cover up that blunder. Perfect example. But yeah, I hate on social media this whole idea around, it's like the good vibes only tribe. Oh my goodness me.
Toxic positivity.
So much toxic positivity. And what I like about TA is, you know, it's very much this idea, if we want to have a human experience, like we need to feel all the feelings. And that's what I like around the winner's triangle, that it's okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to, at some point, not feel so good.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you know, put a sticking plaster over it and paint a smile on your face and pretend that everything's all right. And so that's something that again, it's just another reason why TA sits so nicely with me. But to go back to what you said earlier around, you still get caught in games. Yeah, absolutely. And what you find is the further out from people, it's a bit like, we can mix this a little bit with like Stephen R. Covey's circles of influence stuff, because the further out people are from us, for me, it's so much easier to not get caught in games with them. And the closer and closer and closer you come, the more difficult it is, because these people have more influence over your lives. So, you know, I've made...
And those games have been going on for a long time as well.
So long. I mean, I had a great example. I won't go into the whole details of it, but I had a great game with my dad about TA. Like, of all the things. And I could feel it, and I could feel, we call it the hook in TA. Someone's trying to hook you in. And I could feel it, and I'm thinking, no, don't do it. I'm thinking, you practice what you preach here, rise above it. And then there literally was a moment where I've gone, sod it, I'm in. And that's it, you know, and I jumped into that game full throttle, and I jumped in my usual persecutor role position, and I jumped out of there in victim. But it's just, you know, that's what happens. But I can recognise that now.
Do.
Pardon?
Look what you made me do.
But I can recognise that now. And so now, you know, it makes it even harder to get into a game with people, because I'm more self-aware. I'm more aware of when it is that I'm triggered into these things.
Yeah, and I think for me, it makes it easier for me and my husband to apologise, because now we are very aware of what is our kind of ego stuff. So like today, I'd had a bit of a bad day, nothing to do with my guest Sarah here. Nothing to do with Becky at all. Completely different. And I was at the point where I felt I was going to snap. I felt so stressed and tense. And I text my husband and I was like, Rob, please don't try and be funny today. No. Like, because he knows that I was stressed about this situation, and then he would try and make me feel better by trying making light of it. And it's like, no, not today. Now, what didn't happen is what did happen, was I told him where I was at, and I told him what was a need of mine, and that was, please don't do this, because I'm pretty certain that I'll just go bananas if you do. And I think it just makes you so much more self-aware to say, look, I know that if this leads to this, I know what my normal response is, so let's just not go there. And like with my husband, so if he is feeling a little bit like mopey or whatever, or he needs like a little bit more attention or something, and then he might if he feels like I've neglected him where I've prioritised the washing or the dogs or something, yet he's feeling a little bit like he needs some attention, there's no argument, because it's like, babe, do you know what? I've had a really crappy day. I just need a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And there's none of this, well, you never do this and you never do that. And there's none of that in our relationship. And I truly believe that is because of TA, and because what we started doing during lockdown was watching Bob Cook's videos. So Bob Cook, and I can't remember, Rory, I can't remember his surname, at the Manchester, so it's probably like the Burn and Manchester Institute have probably got like this rivalry or something.
Oh, right.
You know, like the Milky Way, the red car and the blue car. But yeah, I started watching those videos with my husband, and so by default, he now really likes TA.
Oh.
And yeah, it helps us to say sorry more. It helps us say, do you know what? This is my stuff. This is me turning into my mum or my dad, and I'm sorry, and I'm aware of it now.
Mm. And like I say, this is for me is the whole beautiful thing around it. It's that self-awareness, it gives you that power to choose. And I mean, you're really lucky. I love that Rob also has this interest in TA, because that often isn't what happens, right? And what I sometimes feel like self-awareness can almost be like a bit of a curse, because if you're then dealing with someone who isn't self-aware, and you've got the power to choose, sometimes it feels like you've always got to be the one to, like, be the grown-up in this situation, and and not go into your old, less useful ways of sort of thinking, being and doing, and to keep, from an argument, from a, whatever. And so, yeah, I sometimes think, like, if only everyone had this level of self-awareness, and then I wouldn't always feel like it had to be me. Here I am in my victim. It always has to be me who makes the change. But really, there's no curse about it. It really is only a blessing to be able to know yourself enough to know when you're going to be pulled into those things, and to then choose differently. Because, as you rightly say, the impact it can then have on your relationships, whether they're your personal relationships, whether that's your working relationships, can be absolutely immense.
Yeah, and I remember there was a lady that was leaving our office, and oh my gosh, so Rob had I'd what do you call it when you kind of send someone away? What do you call it?
Send someone away?
Yeah, I'd like... Oh, what's that word called? There's people listening to this screaming.
They're screaming the word.
Like
under what context are you sending someone away?
He was doing my head in.
Oh, right, like dismissed him? Like
No, I sent him to Spain.
Oh.
In the comments. I can't think of what the word is. I had sent him away anyway. I'd made him leave because he was just doing my head in. It was during one of the lockdowns, and what was happening was, because I am quite independent, I was really struggling in the house because me and Rob were living and working together. So I would go upstairs because I felt like I needed a bit of space, and that was the only space that we had, like upstairs. And then he would kind of see that I was trying to get some space, so then he would get needy, and then he would follow me up the stairs and then go downstairs. So I sent him away, and I can't think what the word is that I'm thinking of. But anyway, so I sent him to his parents in Spain just to leave me alone.
I've got like banished in my head.
Banished.
Is that the word? I don't know if that's the word you're looking for. You banished into Spain. I love that.
And I think that there was a connection with Rob possibly being like the parent figure in the office, and I think one of the members, the one that was leaving, had become somewhat dependent on Rob. So then when he wasn't in the office, rather than being able to regulate those emotions and kind of work out what it is or have conversations, she wanted to take everything out on me. And I remember being sat in the office, and there was two other people, and I felt like I was being bullied in my own office. And I was sat there doing my work thinking, don't enter into this, Jen. Don't enter into it. Like, acknowledge her if she needs any help or support, But above that, don't enter into all of these things that she's doing, all these behaviours. And she was like really trying. So I remember walking to the toilet, but she didn't just walk to the toilet. Oh no, it was like...
Oh yeah, so everyone knew she was going. Yeah.
And then it got more and more extreme. So I wasn't like ignoring her. I was, anything to do with work, I was helping her with, but all of this extra stuff I wasn't, because it didn't matter. I didn't believe it mattered what I would say. It was going to be wrong anyway because Rob wasn't there, and that was what she wanted. She wanted Rob there, not me. And I remember we've got this like IKEA shelf in the stationery cupboard, and she like held on to the top part of it and then like lifted up, and I'm thinking, she wants that to fall on her. She wants something to happen so I can go, what? Oh God, I just said her name. Can we beep that out, please? Like, what are you doing? And because then we would have entered into a game. Like, oh, you're always you're always having a go at me. I could never do anything right. I was just putting the files away or whatever. I was just restocking the stationery cupboard. But I was so aware not to enter into these games with her. And she left when Rob came back. Even though it was very difficult for me to see all of these invitations to these games, it was so much easier than being in these games, because it would have just gone...
Yeah, and just like, exploded.
Yeah. I can't remember if I've forgotten what my point was there, but that was...
I was talking about the blessing versus curse of self-awareness, and how you have to then be the one. And what you're talking about with the nameless person, it made me think about strokes as well, which is another great part of TA theory, and strokes is it's a unit of recognition, and it's called a stroke because it's something that's given but received as well, a bit like stroking your dog, stroking your cat, and how we learn and we adapt our behaviours when we're younger depending on what we are stroked for. And how very often then as adults we continue those behaviours because that's what we know and that's how we get our units of recognition. So even strokes can be shouting, it can be being scolded. They can be call these cold prickles because they're not nice, but it's a way of us being recognised, and that's one of our human needs, which is again Byrne talks about our needs and our need for recognition. So we carry on doing those things where before we would have got our strokes for. And so it's really difficult then for people to understand, why am I not getting stroked for this anymore? This is what I've always done, and I've always had recognition for stomping off to the toilet. I've always had recognition for whatever else it was that she was trying to draw you into that you weren't doing anymore. So she wasn't having her strokes met, and therefore she's lashing out because she just wants to be seen. She just wants to be recognised. That honestly, we're going to have... You've said a couple of times around not putting you and me under pressure. Like, there's no pressure. Like, I'm in. Like, I'm in the new year because we'll have so much fun with this because there are so many different facets and elements to TA that when you do sort of break them down, look at them individually and really get to know them and understand how they are then impacting your lives, and then you start to piece them together. It's fun. It is fun. I want TA to feel fun, not to feel hard and heavy. I think too often when we're doing self-awareness work, it's sort of sold as having to be hard and heavy. And do you know what? Yeah, it's not always going to be, unicorns and rainbows. But, that we can learn to laugh at ourselves a little bit for like those ways of thinking, being and doing that we've had, and be like, oh yeah, actually maybe I just don't want to do that anymore. Rather than, we don't have to beat ourselves up for it. We can just decide that we're going to do it differently.
Yeah, and with you talking about strokes, so there's two examples that I've got. One is the dog and one is me. And I know that I have a need that needs to be met, and that has given me recognition. So if I've worked on a project at work, it's got nothing to do with anyone else. Nothing at all. Won't impact their work at all. I will pirouette into that office and I will say, tell me I've done a good job. Please. Look at this. Look at this.
Check
what do you think?
Self.
Yeah, because I am aware that I have worked so hard for whatever that is. And for a moment, I just need someone to say, you've done a really good job there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like you say, if we were to trace that back to childhood, maybe that was how I got recognition, or maybe that was what I really wanted and it didn't happen. But I saw others having it. But that is my recognition. So I don't get frustrated when the team in the office don't say, oh, Jen, that project that you worked on, you did a really good job. Because that might not be important to them, or that might not be how they give their strokes. You know, they might make me a brew and that might be their thing to say, well done. But I know that I need to hear those words. And if I don't tell someone I need to hear those words, I can't get mad at them when I don't get them.
No.
So that's a first stroke story. And the second one is, again, going back to lockdown. So I was walking the dog, Sam. We only had one at that time. And walking. And I remember coming home and saying to my husband, like, oh my gosh, I think Sam's getting depressed. I think he's getting really down. Like, no one wants to say hello to him or come and stroke him. And Sam is so sociable. Sam wasn't sad. I was sad. But it took me a little while to work out that it's not Sam, it's me.
Yeah.
All these tiny interactions build up. So everyone, when we go to the checkout and we say, oh, hello, how are you? Are you having a good day? Like, you know, what time are you on till? And whatever. That's me having that conversation with the checkout staff. You know, all of these little strokes and transactions, they build up.
Yeah.
And without them, like, it can be really difficult. So it's recognising what needs do we have, and then how do we get those needs met with the people around us? How can we communicate that in a way that isn't, oh, you never thank me, you never say I've done a good job, you never do this.
Yeah.
I told you I need that.
Yeah. How do I ask for this in an inappropriate way? Because I want my needs to be met, but I'm also a grown-up now and an adult, and I know that stamping my feet is not how I choose to get those met anymore.
Yeah, and definitely with you saying then about you're out, I was trying to think of which ones do I do, because I know that I have made a very, very conscious effort not to like turn into my parents. Like, I really, really have, and try and like not to become too much of a critical parent and tell Rob off. Listen me.
But you're laughing, but that is the dynamic within so many relationships. So yeah, carry on. You're trying not to tell him off.
Yeah, I am. And when you say about the self-awareness, it can be tight. And it's like that incident at work with me where it was difficult not to engage in those games, but it wasn't as exhausting if I had have engaged in them. And I think that if we are working with someone or engaging with someone who hasn't got that self-awareness, we do have to do a little bit more work. And we have to think, right, okay, how can I word this? How can I ask? You know, so one of them was, a recent one was part of work wasn't getting done. And there was two members of staff that were kind of winding each other up. How can you have a conversation that doesn't suggest you're telling them off? And these are the conversations that me and Rob have. How can we not become the parents in the office? So what the conversation was that we decided on was, this is the outcome. And this was given with support with the TA class. This is the outcome. This is what I'm prepared to do to meet it. This is your responsibility in order for us to meet it. What are you able to do to meet it? Are you able to meet your responsibilities? So there's no emotion. There's no, well, you always do this. There's no, please do it. Please.
Yeah.
You know, this is the outcome. This is my role and this is your role. Are you prepared to do that? And that does take, that took, gosh, I'm not sure how long we'd spent having that conversation before we came up with that outcome.
Yeah, but the thing is, the more that it's practiced, the easier those conversations become.
And when it works, oh my gosh, when it works. Shall we leave it at that for now?
Shall we leave it at when it works? We'll leave We'll leave you on a cliffhanger.
I feel that we're at risk of explaining it in not a very succinct order.
So
I think that if we get some structure and we really do a good job of helping to explain visually as well for those that are watching on YouTube.
Yes.
But I can put a link up or something so people can kind of, if we do have any presentations or whatever, so people can then go back to them. And because it's definitely something that I would want to work hard on with you towards in order to help as many people as possible, because it just makes sense.
It really does.
It does. And the final question then.
Dun, dun, dun.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Do you know, I'm gonna let your listeners in on a secret because.
Oh no, is this a train?
No, it's someone just driving around the car park. We're not in the middle of a train line, Jenna.
I felt like the van was moving then.
The best piece of advice, and I was glad actually because Jenna said to me, like, this is the only thing that she said, I'm going to ask you what's the best piece, and it's a good job she did, because I was really, really stuck. I was thinking about like mantras that I've lived by, like my family one is like, feel the fear and do it anyway, and then I thought, but that's not really advice. Anyway, it came to me, and this came from my own coach. She's a lady called Cindy Ferreira. I've been working with her for ages. It's wonderful. And she once said to me, no one has weaknesses until they overuse their strengths. And at first I was a bit like, nah, like I'm not sure I'm on board with that. And then the more I thought about it, the more I saw it everywhere. So I'll be really quick with an example here. So like my background in engineering, it was engineering and project management. So as such, I'm a very analytical thinker, very critical thinker. I'm able to see big picture and then work everything back in little steps, see where problems might be. But what that meant in me now as business owner, Becky, I spent too long thinking. And so then it stopped me. So then my critical thinking and my analytical brain actually became my weakness because it kept me stuck in procrastination.
You got, yeah.
And think about if you're a really kind person, you're someone who, that's something that you consider to be really good about yourself, that you help others out, you give to them in whatever way. Doing that too much can become your biggest weakness because it means maybe people start to take advantage of you. Maybe because you're really kind, you then set expectation levels for other people. That means that you expect them to do the things that you are then doing, and they're just not willing to meet that. So have a think on it, because like I say, when she first said it, I was a bit like, I'm not so sure.
Just remind me again what it was.
So,
because I was trying to think while you were saying
no, that's fine. So nobody has a weakness until they start to overuse their strengths. It's all about finding that balance. But honestly, now you'll see it everywhere. You will see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Start to find that balance.
Yeah, think on that. Well, Becca, thank you very, very much. And I'm so looking forward to what the show looks like. So it'll be like a separate little show, probably about 10 maybe.
Depends how long we decide we're going to talk for.
Yeah, and we'll break it down into like one section. So we've talked today about the winner's triangle, the drama's triangle, I'm okay, you're okay, strokes. But we'll break those down. Yep. So it's
little bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to digest, nice and simple, lots of sort of relevant real life stuff we talked about, didn't we? Why does this matter in your personal life? How does this matter in your professional life? So that you can start to see it and use it everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.